we go. Hey everybody, it's Uncle Grumpy. Welcome to Grumpy Tonight. Tonight with Lawrence Pasternack, our dear friend. Lawrence, how you doing tonight?
Spent the day at my desk getting a lot of work done. So actually not bad. I'm feeling a little sort of relieved of some stress.
That's been a while since you've been able to do that.
I have been busy with lots of things. That's right.
Yeah.
Being the head of the religious studies program has been demanding.
Yeah. So you're not like suddenly discovering THC and it's helping you get everything done?
I don't know if it would have that effect on me.
Okay.
You know,
I
it
just
does for
thought
some people.
I just thought we'd give it a shot. All
Uh,
right. So let's see here. Let me see how this is sharing. All right, I'm going to find this on here for a minute. Um, let's see. Let me talk a little bit about what I've been doing this week and get your input. I've been to a couple dispensaries this week, a grow. I've been talking to a few others, and I've started to address this issue um, of people finding medicine that works and then going back and not finding it again, and trying to find ways for these dispensaries to get relationships with the grows so they buy from them consistently. I know you know a few dispensary owners. Are they just buying from anybody that walks in the door that you're aware of, or are they in situations where they have consistent grows they have relationships with?
I think it varies a lot. I think that some of them are vertically integrated. So, the dispensary also owns a grow or partnered with a grow. And there are some that have a network that they rely upon, and there's others that simply just take on what walks through the door. I know that a number of dispensaries tell me that they just have salesmen appear, they have salesmen appear with one product or another, and so they look it over and they discuss price and make decisions, but it really, really varies from one dispensary to the next.
Well, I would suggest that they start. I mean, while that's workable, um, it's not rocket science to figure out what's worthy of having in your store and what's not. I would suggest that they put a little more effort into consistent relationships with processors and growers instead of bouncing around so much.
Yeah,
Um, you know,
and obviously a big factor in that is testing, right? Terpene profiles and potency testing, and it's just very frustrating to me that how long it's taking before that becomes a standard for the industry here.
yeah, well, all right, let's talk about testing for a second. We know this testing we have right now is a joke, okay? It wasn't lined out to be that way, but it is because what is being tested isn't what's being sold. What I mean by that is while it may be from the same plant, once anybody learns about the cannabis plant, one thing you learn is what it's like at the top and what it's like at the bottom are completely different.
Right.
Well, not completely different, but they vary greatly.
Yeah.
So the testing we have now with these numbers on these jars when you walk in the dispensary saying upwards of 20%, that was on one bud they picked off the top of the plant that they sent in to have tested to get the highest number. And then here's the even more ridiculous part. We have to be honest here, folks. What lab you send it to determines what your test result is. I'm hearing that repeatedly. I'm seeing and hearing posts about being able to send samples from the same batch, from the same colas, to different labs and getting a large variance in the test results. So our testing is a joke. We're spending a whole lot of money, $360 per test with a maximum of a 10-pound batch on a joke, on a piece of paper that means very little to actual real dosing because it doesn't even give an average of what could be in that plant. It gives the highest number possible on what could be in that plant at the top. What do you think? We've talked about this privately. Go ahead.
I have one word,
What's that?
tertiles.
Okay, now you have to explain.
You don't remember tertiles? It's been
I
a
remember
while.
you. I remember you talking about it, but they don't. So you need to tell them more than one
Right, of
word,
course.
Lawrence.
So yeah, it's not just you and me. I know. Way back during the marijuana working group with the legislature, right around the beginning, in fact, say August 2018, I had a conversation with a few people about the issue of consistency in testing and labeling. And if you recall, I did, roughly an hour-long presentation on testing and labeling to the working group. Well, one of the issues that I didn't actually include in that presentation, just because I had a lot of other things to say, but I had a handout that did include it, is the data that's out there with regards to the amount of variation you get across the height of the plant. And so, the name that I think I came up with it, I think I coined it, was tertiles. That is, there's sort of a term in geometry that if you take a line or you take something and you divide it into 3 sections, each one is a tertile. So top, middle, and bottom. And so one thing that I suggested was that when the protocols are set up for testing, that there's supposed to be sampling from each tertile. And so in theory, the top tertile will be homogenized horizontally across the crop, and the middle tertile will be homogenized across the crop, and the bottom tertile will be homogenized across the crop. This is boring, so Chris had to leave. So my thought was that, if you really want consistency, you can take what would otherwise be a range of, let's say, 14 to 22%. If you test out a plant from top to bottom, you might get a range that's going to be 50, 75% variation from top to bottom. But if you focus on just each tertile, you're going to be able to cut that range down to just 3 to 5%. So what I had proposed was, not necessarily as a matter of legislation, but at the regulatory level, that when the testing protocols are set up, that they sample horizontally across the crop, and they homogenize horizontally across that, but then they have testing for each tertile. And so the grower, in theory, could sell the top shelf bud as the top tertile, use the bottom, for instance, for processing, and then the middle would be a more economical option. Really, as medicine, we need consistency. That's absolutely vital. And the tertile model is one that would significantly help achieve that.
Okay, well, I understand how it helps achieve the goal of accurate numbers, but in the situation you've just presented it, that they possibly break that up and sell it 3 different ways,
Mm-hmm.
I can tell you right now that a lot of them already top the plants, and that is sold for more as tops.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Right.
but then the rest they usually just
Right.
is
But
all
let
together.
me
Now,
put it to you
and
this
something
way.
to keep in mind. Look, things you have to keep in mind, like indoor grows, outdoor too, but mainly indoor grows. If they're doing it right, they're going in there and topping everything. Then they're going in a week later and they're topping everything again, and then later on topping everything or taking everything down at that point.
Mm-hmm.
Like myself, I cut on it 3 times before I'm done. That way each part grows up and becomes the top again. So I mean I don't see breaking it up like that to sell. I don't see how that would be feasible. But using that for testing so that you're testing multiple tertiles for an average would be better than what we have now. Pulling samples from multiple levels of the plant would be better than what we have now. But here's where the dilemma falls in. Because everybody seems to love that idea. They're all like, yeah, great, good idea. Oh, wait, who's going to pull the sample? Now we're in the situation of it's almost like the meat inspectors. We now need to have government agents that work for this OMMA to go out and pull the samples, because that's the only way the samples are going to be pulled right. So then they can't pull a sample on every batch. They could spot check places. So then it falls back on the grower again to turn in an honest sample. So I'm just talking this out. I'm just walking through this, and I'm already running into walls. What do you think?
So my thought is that many other states have standard operating procedures that are established by their regulatory agencies. And so those procedures include the rules for sample collection. Now, one of my thoughts is, following the tertile model, is that you would pick a sample from the midpoint of the tertile. And that way you'd get the average across the tertile. Now, you see, if there's a worry about having to then divide each of the tertiles out for marketing, the response is that if you don't do that, you end up with a buds in the same jar that can be anywhere from 14 to 26%, right? So again, if this is medicine, we need consistency. You know, if you're prescribed 5 milligrams of oxycodone, it's not anywhere from 5 milligrams to 10 milligrams. That the FDA allows up to a 20% variation with regards to pharmaceuticals. So, you know, it could be 5% to 6% or 4% to 6% roughly, right? When you're talking about a 5% pill, when you're talking about a 5 milligram pill. But, right, you can't, you know, it's not as if you can go for a 5 milligram pill from anything from 2 milligrams to 8 milligrams. But that's basically what we're looking at if we don't divide it into tertiles. I've been saying this for a year and a half, that if we want consistency, if we truly are committed to consistency here, it has to be done. Otherwise, you pull one bud, it's 14%. You pull the other bud, it's 26%.
Well, perhaps another option would be that the top tertile is what's sold as flour, the rest is processed.
Yeah, but that's a business decision, you know. That's up to the particular grow. And they could always test the middle tertile and make a decision. Now, let me amend this, right? That when you're talking about taking a pill, you don't have control, right? You just swallow the pill and that's it. When you're talking about inhaling, you have control. You can inhale for more or less amount of time. You can inhale multiple times. So a person can self-titrate when they're inhaling a product, and they can't do that with an edible, right? So the need for that, for staying within exactly that 20% scope that the FDA allows, is much more relevant when it comes to something you're going to orally consume than something that you inhale. But nevertheless, you need some sort of baseline. You need some kind of reliable piece of information on the package that tells you. If they say it's 14% and actually it's 26%, as soon as you use it, you might end up getting, you know, too high. If they say it's 26%, it's only 14%, in a sense, that's more correctable. You just inhale more. But, you know, it could be a real problem. And, you know, I don't want to make it any more onerous on industry. There's so many mistakes, right, that the OMMA has already committed because of either bad information or just, you know, just not knowing. But nevertheless, once again, if consistency is the issue, then there's a number of ways of doing it. And when it comes to malfeasance, when it comes to who's going to actually pull those samples, I don't know what to say. When it comes to, you know, when it comes to a lab jacking up the numbers, right, misrepresenting the numbers, or purposefully making sure that the numbers come out as high as possible in terms of sampling, we know that goes on in other states, and I guess it's going on here as well.
Yes,
and
it
there's
is.
been some. And there's been discussions of whether there should be a state-level audit for all of that. But, you know, one of the big picture problems is that we're still at war, right? The war's not over. People now don't go to jail. Most people don't go to jail for having marijuana in our state. But, you know, the amount of barriers, the number of problems, and the difficulties that patients in the industry has is directly proportionate to the goodwill of the legislature and the Department of Health. And that, you know, the more that there is malfeasance in the industry, the more that goodwill is lost.
Okay, that's part of the reason, that goodwill, that's part of the reason why I reached out to you today and wanted to do this show to begin with. So I'm just going to lay it out here for everybody. I know I've pissed off some people in the past when I've called out the industry, but I only did it because I didn't feel that there was any choice. And here we are again, and I don't feel that there's any choice. Here's the deal, folks. We are shooting ourselves in the foot on a daily basis. The fact that we have a dispensary that would run an ad for Topless Tuesday on a medical marijuana program when we're fighting with regulators and legislators to try and get them off our backs so we can save people instead of continuing to put our thumb on people. This is appalling. This is nothing short of appalling. I can't remember anything I've been so pissed about since January. Topless Tuesday, give me a break, folks. What the hell are you doing? I mean, this is just insane. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. I understand a lot of what goes on in this community, okay? And I am to the point now where I am ready to push a full access petition, not only because I think it's the only way to get the legislators off of us, but I think it's the only way to make some people happy and give them what they need so they'll stop screwing up our medical program. And I'm okay with that because I'm okay with everybody doing what they want to do. But this particular business, everybody should stop by and thank them for the regulations. The day after Tammy Townley, as you pointed out earlier, the day after Tammy Townley cancels the interim study on cannabis advertising, something you heard us talk about right here. We have Topless Tuesdays. I'm disgusted. And I think that we as a community at this point need to shame that business owner. I think that is appalling. I think they are causing us so many troubles. Here's the reality, folks. Guess who sent that to me? Guess how I found out? One of our legislators. I didn't run across it on my own. It was sent to me by a lawmaker. So what do you think that lawmaker was thinking when he sent that to me? He's thinking, here's all the justification we need for every rule and every tax we want to add. And if you don't like it, you fix your own house first. What do we do, folks? Lawrence, what do you think about this?
Well, one thing we were talking about earlier was that there was scheduled an interim study on advertising where Representative Tammy Townley wanted to establish some language for a bill that restricted advertising, and that bothered me. There's a lot of advertising that I see as legitimate political speech and First Amendment protected, and I don't want to see any encroachments on that, and I was worried that that would happen. But at the same time, my response is Topless Tuesday? I don't like the idea that there would be a law that would prohibit, topless bud tenders. But, at the same time, this is exactly what I worry about because it clearly sends the message to the legislators. The legislators see this as just rec, not medical, that it's not serious medicine. You don't go to CVS and get, Playboy centerfold inserts inside your oxycodone, right? Like you
right.
collect your Playboy centerfold with your daily prescriptions. Ridiculous. So, it debases it. It takes away the representation of this as medical. And there's so many ways in which this program, I think, needs to really, really seriously reflect upon it not being medical enough. Because there are patients who are just left out because of what's going on. The employers who want safety sensitive, well, that's partially because they don't see it as medicine. They just see that anybody uses this stuff. You can't trust them. They're just going to get high. It's not about medicine. Similarly, all the pain management doctors out there who are terminating their patients. Well, one of the reasons why is they don't think of this as medicine still. And so they think of it simply as just a way to get high. And they think that they don't want any patient who is already being prescribed psychoactive medication to yet have another thing that is, again, not clearly medical, without any kind of industry that's trying to control dosing and trying to control potency. And instead, right, is honestly, legitimately celebrating the liberty that's been so long fought for. But it does come at a cost. And the cost is losing the goodwill of our legislators and getting a lot of potential patients unable to use it because their life circumstances are such that they are subject to employer policies, pain management policies, and such. And everything that happens that represents cannabis as non-medical makes this war harder to win.
You know, I remember not long ago we were somewhat bothered, but understood when Tammy Townsley started that interim study, understood some of the names. You know, some of these names of some of the dispensaries don't really scream medical, but you know, it's not something you can't get past. But this, pushing the envelope towards a medical or towards a rec program is one thing. This business isn't pushing towards a medical or towards a rec program. Okay? They're just pushing garbage. And they're going to cost us our medical program. They're going to cost, as Lawrence just said, people are not going to be able to access this because of rules and regulations that are and will be implemented because of this sort of behavior. And while I don't want to name the dispensary, everybody knows who I'm talking about, and I want to say that these same people were stealing a child's a trademark from a children's show to get started in business anyway. So this particular company has done nothing even remotely close to what we need in this industry. I would, under most circumstances, not do this, but in this circumstance, I have to say we need to shame this business owner. We need this to stop. This has to stop. We have to find a way to stop this. We have to show the lawmakers that sent this to me that we can police ourselves. Those that are shopping at this place need to stop. This business needs to understand we won't go in their store. We won't support their business or anything they're doing while they're doing this stuff. If you guys see somebody going in there, tell them not to. Point out to them what they're doing to those that still need access to this and aren't getting it because of safety-sensitive jobs or some other regulation that, as Lawrence has described well, is left up to the goodwill that we have with the lawmakers. I'm beside myself. That's who that is sitting next to me. I'm beside myself.
Funny.
So there you go. And obviously everybody knows who it is, so I'm checking out the notes. But, that's good. So make it clear to everybody to not go to this place. Make it clear to everybody not to supply this place with product. I know if I was a grow or a process, I would be ashamed to have my products in there. And I wouldn't hesitate to call out anybody who has their stuff in there. You guys need to stop that. There's enough dispensaries out there. You don't need to do business with this one. You really don't, folks. And I hate to say that. That's not what we do around here. We don't call for boycotts. But come on. How many people are going to suffer because this particular business can't think straight? They just think sex sells and that's all that matters. It sells. Money, money, money. Disgusting. All right, so to move on slightly from that, or at least to move to, again, what the ramifications of this are. We know from what we're hearing out of the Capitol that we're going to have limited bills on cannabis this year. Bad rumor is 2, maybe 4. I don't know that we can get everything fixed that way. Some at the Capitol think that's all that need to be fixed, and then we can do more the year after that. I don't see that as an option. I think we have to do like we said we were going to do at the end of last session. I think we need to continue just as we have. I can tell you none of my feelings about this have changed. I still believe the right answer here is to run a full access petition during the legislative session to point out to them that we won't tolerate overregulation from the regulators by powers given to them by the elected officials. It's on them to fix this. We think the LMMA might stand a chance of being taken away from the health department. That's good news. But then I'm worried because the same people who are going to set up the new OMMA could be the same ones that helped slip those things into 1030 and 1120 and gave the health department unlimited powers to do any regulations. So I'm a little worried. So what choice do we have? The way I see it, the only choice is to start gathering signatures again. I don't see an option. We have to make it clear to them. I've talked to some of them through the summer about possibly them doing their job and representing us and writing a petition for us. I understand their position. They don't want to do that unless they can get enough support. Nobody wants to put up a bill that's going to fail. But as long as they're pushing us so hard, we have to push back even harder. That's the only way we're going to move forward. And 788, I wish I had been here at the beginning of it, but it happened because the people decided they couldn't take it anymore. And I think that's where we're at again. What do you think?
I think that full access is inevitable. At a national level, I think it's inevitable. That obviously Canada is the first developed country that did it. Uruguay preceded them. And probably next week it's going to happen in Mexico. There's a bill already in their legislature, and I think next week it's going to be heard. I don't know if it's going to be voted on next week, but in the coming weeks. And so by the end of the year, at least, Mexico will probably also have full access. So, to the north of the country, to the south of the country, there'll be full access. There's full access in 11 or 12 states now, and in all probability, there's going to be, at least a handful of others within the next 4 to 6 months. So it's, as I see it, inevitable. I don't see how it's going to be stopped. It's just a matter of how long it's going to take. And I think it's in the interest of Oklahoma. I think it's in the interest of the people of Oklahoma, of the economy of Oklahoma, to come in sooner rather than later. That if Oklahoma has full access, Texas is one of the richest states out there, one of the most populous states out there, and there's just enormous economic opportunity. As well as that, because we're an agricultural state, because land and costs here are low, Oklahoma likewise could become a major supplier, especially for outdoor, even for indoor cannabis, through this region, through the rest of the country, even internationally. So there's enormous opportunity there, but it's often the case that those who are first in line get those opportunities. I'm mostly concerned about patient interest. I'm mostly concerned about the medical benefits of cannabis, but at the same time, I think politically that it would be to the benefit of this state to have a full access program. I think it would be overwhelmingly to the benefit of this state. I know the statistics from other states, and if we were to look at the way in which the economy and the whole infrastructure of Denver in particular changed in Colorado due to full access, this would be a massive economic boom. Dallas is a very wealthy city, and the I-35 corridor will become a route for a lot of people in Texas to come to Oklahoma if we had full access. So huge amount of money,
I believe that
tens of billions, hundreds of billions. I'm not sure, but a mammoth, an order of magnitude higher than, we have 200,000 medical licensees. Imagine if we had 2 million people who were purchasing from stores here, which I think is what would happen if we had full access. 2 million.
Something I want to point out here, Sean on here made an excellent point that if we can't get the safety sensitive jobs part fixed, if that remains, while that remains, our elected officials pulled the bait and switch on us. Because we voted for 788, we voted for people to be able to keep their jobs and use cannabis. And safety sensitive jobs took away all those protections. I can tell you in a conversation I had last week with one of our elected officials, they put me on the spot and they said, look, what exactly is it you're upset about? And well, since I don't have a commercial license, I couldn't come up with all the regulations off the top of my head. So I simply thought safety sensitive jobs. That's it. As long as that stands, then they pulled a bait and switch and we've lost, and we must push forward with another petition. As long as safety sensitive jobs is there, the way they put it, the way they worded it, everybody needs to get on the street corner and start getting signatures because they've done a bait and switch. We need to take this back.
Yeah. There are various states out there that makes it illegal for employment decisions to be based upon THC urinalysis. Makes it illegal. It's illegal,
Now,
just in the same way that's illegal to fire somebody, based upon race and religion and gender. It's likewise illegal to fire somebody on their THC status, and that's as it ought to be. And the reason why is because employers are acting as bigots. Because the assumption is if you test positive for THC, you're not trustworthy. There is no correlation between a positive THC test and impairment. Positive THC test merely means that you have a non-psychoactive metabolite in your system, which could be there from as far back as 90 days prior. So, and even still just from hemp too. So a positive urinalysis doesn't mean that you've committed any, criminal action at the federal level. It doesn't do anything to address whether or not the employer is a drug-free workplace, because THC as such is not necessarily illegal. And that if the employer says, well, you're a THC user, so we can't employ you, what that means is we don't think you're the kind of person who is responsible enough for me to employ you. If you use cannabis, you're not a responsible person. If you use cannabis, then we can't know that you're not high right now. If you use cannabis, then we can't tell whether or not you're the kind of person that would just use it during your off hours to help you sleep, to help with some back pain at the end of the day, or whatever it is, and somebody who comes to work high. This is bigotry. This is bigotry because what they're doing is they're making a moral judgment. They're telling you who they think you are. Just like it used to be the case, employers wouldn't hire black individuals. Well, why not? Because they thought that blacks were morally inferior. They were bad people. Jews, bad people. Can't trust them. There's no difference. This is bigotry. This is flat out bigotry. And, if we can't protect people from bigotry, then we're failing as a country.
Well, then I suggest that we make what you just said, this where they cannot test for THC. Perhaps we make that part of the petition.
Yep.
Perhaps that needs to be in there. Perhaps the people need to tell the government, we won't let you do this anymore.
And let me put it to you this way. Just as there are some bad actors in the cannabis industry who are acting irresponsibly, so likewise there are bad actors in the world of employers who aren't acting responsibly and are not using what's allegedly an issue of workplace safety in an honest and fair way. They are abusing their concern over workplace safety to instead turn it into a moral and political litmus test. They're bad
I,
actors.
I,
If we need to do something to fix problems in the cannabis industry, we need something to fix problems in the bigotry that is out there.
I reached out to 3 attorneys in the last week after having a conversation with an elected official who didn't think that people were losing their jobs over the safety sensitive jobs issue. I can tell you that one law firm had, I think, 3 or 4 cases. The other one had 5 or 6, and one had about 10, and claims they've gotten over 50 calls.
Yep.
So they just haven't taken them all. But that's how many active cases they have where they're defending people, where they were wrongfully terminated, where there was enough wrongful termination there for the lawyers to want to jump in and help. And that takes a lot. So imagine how many people got away with it and are getting away with it, and just, no one's being sued.
Right. And here's one factor that, the employer's response might be something like, we don't want to take the risk. We're not necessarily saying you're a bad person. We're not necessarily saying you're coming to work hard. But we don't want to take the risk. Well, the thing is, they risk people coming to work exhausted because they didn't get a good night's sleep. They risk people coming to work who have a cold, who are taking Benadryl. They risk people who are drunk at work. They risk people who are impaired in 1,000 different ways. How is this so different? Again,
it's marijuana.
It's bigotry. It's a cultural attitude towards a plant. And if they were truly concerned, if their number one concern here was workplace safety, then testing for impairment through urine doesn't test whether or not you are presently impaired. If they really want to test for impairment, there are technologies that can do it and that are used in other states. And if they don't use them, but instead they're using a urine test, they're not testing for impairment, and it probably means either they just don't know any better or they don't care, because really what they want to do is find out who are the druggies, who are the marijuana users. It used to be, before the 1960s or 70s, it used to be that there were certain people who had African American descent or African descent who passed as white. They had light enough complexion, their nose was more European shaped. They might have had a father or a mother who was of African descent, but they took on the features of their other parent, and so they passed as white. And if their employer found out that they were half or a quarter black, they'd be fired. And so what's happening right now is the same. There are employees that are, for all the employer knows, are perfectly fine and good people. But they want to find out through these drug tests if they're just passing as fine and good people. But maybe the truth is that they're an evil marijuana user. They're of bad moral character. And the thing is that, going back to Topless Tuesdays, we don't have topless CVS pharmacies. And so what do the employers out there and the legislators out there think about what cannabis means when what's supposed to be a medical dispensary is trying to promote their product through topless bud tenders?
Yeah.
If they want to be bigots, we're giving them the ammunition.
That's right. Like I said, we keep shooting ourselves in the foot. We keep doing this to ourselves. We can't control the fringes. But too many, if they can afford to stay open, they're getting too many customers because they shouldn't be able to. We shouldn't be giving them any business.
And go back to High Times, straight face stoner contest.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. That, and there are just so many signals out there to those people who are looking to reinforce their bigoted attitudes that they're right.
Okay. Well, here's the thing, though. We can't let them stop us. We have to shake off these people somehow and and fix our medical program. We have people that are dying, people we need to take care of. So I see no option other than to give these people what they need so that they stop becoming such a black eye in our community by giving them full access. It also gives it to a lot of people who can't get into this program. Let's take away the ability for drug testing for THC, or at least legally require it to be different than it is now, and perhaps we can fix this. I think everybody should be able to get behind those things.
Here's an idea I just had. I've been really busy with other things, as for recent weeks. As I've said before, I was appointed as the director of religious studies at OSU this semester. So it's been just very demanding on my time, and I haven't updated the okcla.org website since, I don't know, August or so, and it's time for an update. And one thought that I just had was maybe something that you and I and Norma and anybody else who may be listening and is interested, and anybody out there, we get people who contact us through the okcla.org website who want to help out, and sometimes we're just so busy we just miss those emails. So I apologize. I think there's somebody who sent me an email at some point and I just lost it. It's like I was trying to find it for a while. But anybody who wants to help out with us, that's great. Get in contact with us. And we're actually looking for like a membership manager to help us out. And so my thought is this. Maybe what we should have, and maybe what we should work on through the OKCLA, is something like a code of conduct. Just saying, these are the things that it's not a matter of law by any means. It's just a matter of etiquette. And there are some issues of etiquette that we might want to talk through and have a code of conduct proposal. And perhaps dispensaries and other parts of the industry may, say, just like, we have crafted the Cannabis Constitution a year ago, right? And some people have it up on their wall and so on. You can get it on the OKCLA website now. I put it up there. Maybe what we want is, a cannabis code of conduct. Cannabis code of conduct.
It's a good idea. We should bounce that around some more. I like that. All right. Well, we're coming up on 45 minutes already, and that's longer than we planned on going. So, again, to wrap it up, bring it all together, everybody knows how I feel about this business issue. Stop doing business with these people. If you know them, tell them to reach out to me. I think I might even call the store tomorrow and let them know what we think of their advertising. But
maybe invite the owner to the show.
There you go. We could do that. That's a good idea. But once again, we can't let the behavior of a few be used as justification to restrict the medicine for the rest of us. So because it is being used that way, because that's how it's going to continue to be used, how all this stuff is being used, I believe, we have no choice. We must run a petition. It's time to gather signatures again. And I think it's 176 or 178,000 is what they have to get on that one they're doing right now. They said they just got the numbers for.
Is that for a constitutional amendment?
Yes.
Yeah.
The one that's running right now to expand Medicare or Medicaid.
Right.
That one had to get 178. We would be the same way. So there you go, folks. We need 178,000 signatures. I want to do this, as I said months ago, during the legislative session.
About 80% of the licensees.
Yeah. As of today.
Yeah.
But by then it will be even higher, or it'll be a less percentage, but there'll be even more patients. So the dispensaries need to be willing to run these petitions. They need to be willing to step up. We need to raise some serious money. These things don't pay for themselves. So the dispensaries that want, like Lawrence just talked about, the endless supply of customers coming up I-35, help fund the petition, help fund the drive, help fund the advocacy. Help defend your business. I've had some people, I'll end it with this. I've had some say that it was okay to have no limit on businesses at the beginning, but we're getting saturated. We have to now take a look at putting a limit on those business licenses. Okay, so what? Suddenly it's harder for everybody else? That's not fair. I've got a better idea. Rather than putting a limit on the licenses, why don't we make it unlimited patients, meaning full access? Everybody, everywhere can come here and buy their cannabis. Then it doesn't matter if we have a dispensary on every store or on every corner, because we have customers keeping those operations running fine. All right. There you go.
To balance the economy, there are a few different options. Increase the number of consumers or reduce the number of retailers or industry folks.
Other than the moral objection, I can't come up with a reason as to not do it. The false argument about raising the homeless numbers and all that,
Let me speak to the homeless issue. Why was there an increase in homelessness in Denver? Do you know?
No, I don't. I do know. Because the dispensaries and the other businesses caused the property values to go up, and people started buying the houses and fixing up the houses, and they became more valuable, and people couldn't afford them.
Right. There was so much cannabis tourism that homes went up 10 times in value. Low-income neighborhoods that were basically, just Section 8 housing, all of them just simply landlords renting out to people on welfare and so forth. Those homes became extremely valuable. Those were the places where a lot of dispensaries were coming in, and thus these houses were getting rented out through, what's the name of that website where people could rent a house for a few days?
Oh, shit. I'm brain dead all of a sudden. Can't think of it. I don't remember. You're going to look it up, aren't you?
Airbnb.
That's it. Yes.
Yeah. Right.
Yes.
So, through Airbnb and all that kind of stuff, all these homes that, were these like houses that were only worth $50,000 in these dilapidated neighborhoods, all of a sudden became great rental properties, and they became much more valuable. And in fact, I was there. I went to Denver a few times. I explored. I looked around. I learned about it. And almost everybody there who's homeless, they got evicted. And they're on the streets because they don't have the resources to get into a new house even, right? They don't have a down pay, or they don't have, first and last month's rent and so on. They didn't have the resources in many cases to get into a new home, and there wasn't nearly enough Section 8 housing and so on. And so while some people went to Denver hoping to get into the industry and failed, right? That, of course, counts for some of it. Overwhelmingly, what happened was rental prices shot up, which made a lot of people unable to afford homes, and they got evicted and live on the streets. So, that's something obviously to bear in mind. If we have full access, that it could happen in Oklahoma City, it could happen in Tulsa. These are things to be concerned about and to prepare for. But, that's the mechanism. And, it's related to it in terms of cannabis tourism, so to speak. Kansas now has an affirmative defense law. Kansas passed a law. They don't allow retail sale, but it's now legal in a sense for you to possess it. That is, there are various provisions. I won't go into the details, but just with a doctor's note, you can, if you have cannabis, you have a doctor's note, then you have what's called an affirmative defense, that you could be charged and the charges are dropped. And so dispensaries could open up all across the Kansas border here in Oklahoma, just like they could for Texas. We will have people from other states coming. And in addition to creating a full access program for the state, we have a way of helping people from other states that can't get that help where they go. We can call it a sanctuary bill, the Cannabis Sanctuary Act.
Well, if we do nothing, the homeless rate in Oklahoma will increase, because the unemployment rate is going to increase because people are losing their jobs because they thought they were protected and going to be able to safely use cannabis as medicine. Mm-hmm. And I know, like I said, I personally know multiple people that this has happened to already. Mm-hmm. So it's just, we don't have any choice. It's time. I mean, we're past that tipping point, in my opinion, of being able to do nothing and hope that they can fix us a little at a time. We have to take the next biggest giant step for the sake of the state, for the sake of the entire economy in Oklahoma. We need full access. I think that solves so many problems.
Yeah, if the OMA acted more responsibly, if jobs weren't being taken away from by virtue of legislation, if safety sensitive employers were acting more responsibly, then I'd say just keep the medical program. But this is for me about medicine, but this is also for me about social justice.
Right.
And I am just appalled at how much bigotry is out there. We think of Oklahoma as a place where there's a lot of racism. At least people out in other parts of the country think that way. And frankly, we're just telegraphing that to the world that this is a state of bigots. Whatever they can be bigots about.
Well, I tell you what it does for most of us that grew up here is it tells us that while we did something crazy by passing 788, Oklahoma didn't really change that much.
Yep.
It really didn't. All right, Lawrence, let's wrap it up. Anything before we go?
Could I do a little kind of like shameless self-promotion?
One more time. There we go. Of course
One
you
more
can.
I want to just thank the Oklahoma Gazette and Matt Dinger. They did a profile of me last week that really kind of came out of the blue, and I was really surprised and just really thrilled and pleased by what they wrote. Anybody who wants to look at it, I think it's too late to get a print copy. They came out on my birthday, in fact, October 2nd last week. But you can go to the Gazette website and just type in my name, and probably you'll find it. I'm really pleased. I just want to thank them.
How about you find the link and post it in the comments on this video so everybody can just go there and find it?
Sure.
Will that work?
Yeah.
All right. Well, I haven't had dinner yet. We started this just when I got back from the grocery store. So I have a steak sitting behind me waiting for me to cook it. So I am going to get off here and eat some dinner. Okay?
Have a good dinner.
All right, Lawrence.
Yes,
all right, folks. That's it for now. Until next time, stay grumpy. We'll see you on the road.
Bye, everyone.